Welcome. In this video, we're going to be going over the number one underrated use of your email list. Now, this particularly applies to e-commerce. My name is Angus Cowan. I run an email marketing agency for direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands. In the last 12 months, we've worked with more than 120 brands and generate over $80 million in email revenue each and every year. And in my opinion, right now, this is probably the most underrated use of an email list. There's plenty of ways to use your email list, and primarily it's to make money and to reduce your reliance on paid media. But there are other ways that you can use your email list to indirectly support this goal outside of just sending campaigns and abandoned checkout emails and all of that typical good stuff that does yield results. But there is more ways to use it by leveraging data that you have sitting there. At the end of the day, what is your email list? It's a database. And inside that, there is data that you can also extract from it. And the way that I like to do that at the moment is by leveraging post-purchase surveys. Now, post-purchase surveys, it's pretty simple. The name says it. It's a survey that you send to a customer after they place an order. Now, a lot of brands, well, not a lot, but there are a few brands that do this. Brands definitely do this. Sophisticated brands and smart brands definitely do leverage post-purchase surveys, but I don't think they're fully used to the potential. Like, I know of many brands who use a post-purchase survey, but they don't even leverage the data or use it to their advantage in a sense. Like, they just set up the post-purchase survey to tick a box, but then they don't actually really do anything with it. So let's sort of go over some practical ways you can use a post-purchase survey and why I think they're better than, say, a pre-purchase survey. So let's sort of move on here. I've got a bit of a mind map to go through. Now, I think post-purchase surveys, actually, let's look at an example. So I've got an example of a post-purchase survey here that we have for a client. What you'll see here, and I'll explain why, but it's a very sophisticated survey. We go through lots of different questions here. There'd be about 10 or 11 questions, pretty in depth. We try to keep them multi-choice to make it easy for the customer. But by the time someone finishes this survey, you will know a lot about people. And by the time you have a couple of hundred or a few hundred or a few thousand answers of this survey, you're going to have a lot of data that you can lean on to help make decisions. Now, firstly, I think post-purchase surveys are better than pop-up form surveys. Now, what is a pop-up form survey? Essentially, some of you might have seen this company Alia Learn. And this is just an example. You don't need to use this company to set up your pop-up forms, but this is just an example. Now, I think these are great. Like, pop-up form surveys can be really, really good. And, to an extent, I think a lot of brands should use them. However, I do think your post-purchase survey is going to yield more valuable data in the long term. And the reason for that is a pop-up form survey is being presented to a lot of cold traffic, a lot of people who are just filling out the survey because they want 10% off. So inherently, some people are going to skew the data just by clicking anything random just so they can get the discount. And some people are going to skew the data by inherently being cold, unqualified traffic and filling out your survey. They haven't placed an order yet. So this isn't necessarily your dream customers who are filling out this survey. They're random audience. It could be, 10,000 people who have come from a TikTok ad who don't even end up buying your product. But they fill out the survey to get a discount code and then, they disappear. So you're going to get a lot of interesting data on the pop-up form survey, which can be leveraged to a really high level and is a good way to tag people with something they might be interested in that you can use later on potentially in the welcome flow or whatever. But I do think inherently the data that you get from a post-purchase survey is going to be better than a pop-up form survey because you're talking to your actual customers. You're talking to people who have actually placed an order with you. It's like the reason that it's the reason that you set your Facebook Pixel event to be placed order or whatever it is. It's because you only want Facebook algorithm. You only want the Facebook algorithm learning on data of customers, not just all your clickers, for example. So, similarly, you should be leveraging insights from your customers based on who actually goes on to place an order. They're going to be the best people to ask because they're the ones who actually ended up being customers. There's certainly an argument for getting data from people who don't convert because you might be able to understand why they're not converting, especially if you do have a conversion issue. But in terms of being able to refine your marketing messaging and all these other great things you can do, learning about the people who are actually placing orders on your website is going to be a great way to do this. And that's why I do think post-purchase surveys are probably more practical and actually can be used more than your pop-up form surveys. Now, on a post-purchase survey, you can ask many, many more questions. On a pop-up form survey, you only have so much time. Like after this, you pretty much have to collect an email, or you risk losing the email. Like your ultimate goal here is to collect an email at the end of the day. So, this is kind of nice, but you can't push your luck. You can't ask like 10 really insightful questions. You can sort of just ask one, try to get the email, and then get out of there. Whereas if you go over to our post-purchase survey, these are people who have just placed an order and they're now a customer with you. They do feel a part of something. They're typically going to be willing to fill this out, especially like repeat customers. Repeat customers will definitely fill something like this out. You would be surprised at how many people you can get to fill this out, especially if you put an incentive on. You can give discount codes at the end of these surveys or something. Like there's plenty of ways to collect this data. And I typically think customers, and from what we've seen, are much more inclined to actually spend time filling out these surveys than just some like cold traffic. So you can afford to ask more questions because people are willing to, help out. They feel like they're part of something, and they might even feel like, they're getting a more personalized service, and you can frame it in a sense of this survey is going to contribute to your business being able to develop better products and make better decisions in the business that is going to benefit the customer, which is true. So that's great. Now, what you can do, like I said, is you can actually turn this into an upsell as well. So you can incentivize people to fill out the survey with a voucher. Anyone who fills out the survey will get a $20 voucher that they can use on their next order. People are going to fill out the survey for $20, especially if they're a customer who wants to buy again. Invaluable data to you. It doesn't have to be $20, this is an example, but you give away a small incentive in return. You might actually then turn that into an upsell and make more profit off people filling out the survey. So a bit of a nice flywheel there. So that's, I guess, why I think it's better than a pop-up form survey. But I guess the misconception of a lot of these surveys in e-commerce is what you should actually do with them. A lot of people think, I'm going to collect all this amazing data and then I'm going to be able to create really amazing segments. I'm going to be able to work out who wants vitamin D supplements, who wants vitamin C supplements, or I'm going to work out who wants t-shirts versus who wants hoodies, or I'm going to be able to work out, who's interested in weight loss versus who's interested in weight gain. And then you're going to be able to split this into, a complex email campaign segmenting strategy or flow splits, which are going to be able to enhance your marketing results. But that is not necessarily the case. And I don't actually think that's the best use case, because what ends up happening is you can try leverage a lot of this data from segmenting to create segments. Like for example here, fitness goals. We can collect a bunch of fitness goals from people, but these also change over time. These can change week to week sometimes, depending on who you ask. And you would be relying on a lot of this data like being true and I guess holding for a long enough period of time. And then the effort that goes into creating additional content to appeal to these people for the upside that you get from doing that. Like, for example, say you were to build an email campaign that was, dedicated to helping people build muscle versus one dedicated to helping people lose weight. It might be great, but you can probably just build a general campaign about the benefits of a product and probably hit both targets with less effort. So I don't necessarily think that's the best use of a post-purchase survey. If I was collecting data from a post-purchase survey, which we are for plenty of clients, this is how we typically like to use it. You can use it for ad angles. Say you look at this and you see a trend. You can upload, the answers of this to AI or something. Obviously, be careful with customer privacy. Don't upload emails to AI, whatever it is. But you might see a trend where 90% of your customers are looking to increase strength. Bang. You can then turn that into an ad angle. People who are successfully purchasing are interested in these things. Obviously, there's nuance to this. You'd want to know who's successfully purchasing. Are they purchasing, high AOV products? For example, if you have enough data, you might actually be you might be able to be more strategic with your post-purchase survey and maybe only send it to your highest LTV customers. That would be a fantastic idea. And then you could use that in your ad angles. All those sorts of things are going to be like strategic decisions you can make with these post-purchase surveys, and then obviously leverage the patterns that you get from the answers in those surveys to formulate angles that you use on ads, especially if you're spinning up different angles all the time, which a lot of brands should be and are. Secondly, you can use it for product development, depending on the way that you gear your questions. It's a really good way to work out what your customers may be interested in, or even, leverage the brain of your customers, or leverage the actual, wants and needs of your ICP in the form of a survey to give you suggestions for product development. I think one of the, biggest things that makes an e-commerce brand profitable in the long term is their ability to sell more to the customer base that they're already building. Acquiring new customers is great and it's super, super important, but also being able to leverage and find new ways to sell to the same customers who know and love you is a very, very profitable exercise. So if you can find suggestions for product development in a post-purchase survey, that's invaluable. Thirdly, customer service. You can just use it to get feedback on different aspects of your business. It could be shipping times, customer service. It could be anything. Say you're noticing, a drop in retention over, year on year. You might want to work out why that is. So you could send out a post-purchase survey and I guess gain some data on potentially where people are not liking their experience with your brand. As we know, retention is more than just, sending email and SMS. It's, a customer's experience with products. It's a customer's experience with shipping and customer service. It's the customer's overall experience with your business. So I would almost recommend changing your post-purchase survey to do with the problem or I guess in line with the season of what you're trying to solve in your business at that point. If you're having a retention issue, try gear some questions towards that. If you're looking for, particular insights on product development, try gear your questions towards that. If you have a tangible goal of what you're trying to understand from your post-purchase survey, it's going to be stronger. Now, lastly, I would just use this for overall marketing strategy. Like I said, you don't want to necessarily use the data to be like, I'm going to try to turn this into really niche segmenting. It can be good, but it's going to be better to try leverage patterns to direct your overall marketing strategy and your marketing messages. Like if you're finding that nearly every single person who comes through is trying to solve for lack of sleep or restless sleep, that's probably going to direct the angle that you go with your overall business, your product development, your marketing, your branding, I guess, everything. So overall, you can gain a lot of insights. So I think post-purchase surveys are the number one thing that is slept on in e-commerce email marketing right now, and just leveraging your email list to do bigger and better things. Your email list is an asset. It's not just something to generate short-term sales from. It's something that you can use to your advantage over and over if you know what to do and if you know what your goals are. So if I can give any advice to round out this video, it's work out what the goals in your business are right now. Use that to create post-purchase surveys that you can use to either gain clarity on or hypothesize or I guess validate the hypothesis of that goal you're trying to achieve. So yeah, definitely leverage post-purchase surveys. By all means, don't not leverage pop-up form surveys. I think these are great. I think Alia can be a cool company and I think there's plenty that can be gained here. But what the amount of data that you can get on a post-purchase survey absolutely trumps a pop-up form survey. So that is my 2 cents. Set up your post-purchase survey. How you can do this in Klaviyo. Create a list, and then you can actually create a subscribe page for that list, and you can just make that the survey. So we just send people a link to this. This is literally where they land. They fill all this out. They click submit. It subscribes them to a new list in Klaviyo. Then we just have that data in Klaviyo. All of this tags to their profiles, and we can export it whenever we like, and gain the patterns from there and analyze patterns from there. So that is my post-purchase survey rundown. Hope this helps. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments. I'd love to get back to you. And if you're looking to nail your e-commerce, email, and SMS marketing and your retention marketing strategy in general, there will be a link below to get a free audit from us of your current setup. Cheers. Hope you took value out of this video.